The late spring sun cast a golden glow over Dust Hollow. Ribbons fluttered along the stalls. The smell of baked goods and fiddle music filled the air. People from all over gathered in the square, where the annual flower festival was entering its most important part, the announcement of the best bouquet. The drums sounded. The mayor, with his round belly and tight waistcoat, stepped onto the makeshift wooden stage. His voice boomed. This year's winner, with her vibrant and creative bouquet of wildflowers, is Elena Ward. For a moment, the square froze. Eyes turned to the back of the crowd, where a girl in a patched, faded gray dress stood still. She held a simple bouquet of wildflowers, tied with a piece of torn cloth. Her slender face was flushed, her blue eyes shining with both surprise and bewilderment. Elena couldn't believe she had just heard the name correctly. A murmur of voices immediately arose. It's the barmaid. Look at her cracked shoes. They're not worthy at all. What a joke. Wildflowers win prizes. Elena took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding, but she still lifted her feet and walked towards the stage. Each step seemed to drag the weight of the world. Her patched skirt scraped the ground. Her old shoes were covered in dust, but her back was straight, her chin held high. In her arms, the bouquet of wildflowers shimmered in the afternoon sun, so brilliant that it drowned out the taunts. Right next to the stage, Margaret Halden, the only daughter of the richest banker in the area, was standing in a cream-colored silk dress. Her skin was white and rosy, her lips were red, and her perfume was strong. Margaret was sure that the prize would be hers. When Elena approached, Margaret's eyes flashed with jealousy. With just one mischievous move, disaster struck. Elena tripped and fell forward. A bucket of dirty water that someone had just placed loosely on a wooden platform spilled over, pouring from her shoulders to the hem of her skirt. The murky water scattered a fishy smell, accompanied by shrieks of laughter from the crowd. The bouquet of wildflowers fell, crushed under the dusty boots. Elena staggered, her trembling hands reaching out as if to pick them up, but the mocking shouts echoed in her ears. Do you think you're a young lady? Dirty is still dirty. Cover poverty with flowers. The laughter was like thunder, louder than the fiddle music. Elena's face was red, her lips trembling. In that moment, she felt as if the ground beneath her feet had collapsed. The whole world was spinning. But instead of collapsing, she clenched her teeth, bent down to pick up the broken flowers, and stood up straight. Her blue eyes were filled with tears, but her gaze did not lower. The space suddenly fell silent. Heavy footsteps echoed from the end of the square like the distant echo of drums. A tall figure emerged from the crowd. His long black cloak fluttered in the wind, his leather boots making a deep sound on the ground. Everyone recognized the man, Adrian Blackthorne, Baron Thorn Ranch, the man the whole town called the Silent Shadow. He was known for being cold and reclusive, never entering noisy festivals like this. Yet now he strode towards Elena, his stormy gray eyes locked on the small figure in the wet dress. The crowd stirred, then fell silent. Adrian stopped in front of Elena. She looked up, her lips parted in surprise. Under all eyes, he took off his thick, dark black cloak and draped it over her trembling shoulders. The fabric was heavy, but warm like a protective wall. His voice echoed, decisive like a sword cutting through all the whispers. My ranch needs a woman like you. The whole square erupted in gasps of surprise. Some gasped, others covered their mouths, and Margaret turned pale, her red lips trembling as if she were about to cry. Elena was stunned. The crushed petals in her arms trembled with her rapid breathing. She didn't understand why someone like Adrian Blackthorne, powerful, wealthy, aloof, would speak up for her. In that chaotic moment, he leaned in, whispering so only she could hear. I saw you in the rain, leading the blind woman home, leaving her last coin and then quietly leaving. Did you think no one saw? That heart, I need it for Thorn Ranch more than anything. Elena was stunned. Memories flooded back, the rainy night, the muddy alley, the old blind woman's trembling hand clinging to her. She had left her small amount of money without a thank you. Elena had believed it was a meaningless act, unseen by anyone. But Adrian had seen it. Her cheeks burned, not from shame, but because someone had finally seen her true worth. The square was silent. Everyone waited. While Elena hesitated, Adrian thrust his arm forward firmly. And in the crimson sunset, as the fiddle music faltered, Elena, the girl who had once been ridiculed for being poor, suddenly became the center of attention in Dust Hollow. Night fell over Dust Hollow, the new moon hidden behind gray clouds. The square was quiet, only the tattered ribbons fluttering in the wind. Elena Ward trudged back to the small rented room behind the tavern, her shoulders still shaking in Adrian Blackthorn's heavy black cloak. She wanted to throw it away, but the lingering warmth made her hands unable to bear it. Everything that had happened was still swirling in her head. That cold gray gaze, the words that echoed across the crowd, "My farm needs a woman like you." Elena clutched the crushed wildflowers. "I don't need your pity," she whispered in the darkness, but her heart was trembling with a strange feeling she had never felt before: fear, warmth, and confusion. In the attic, her younger brother, Henry, lay huddled on the old bed. The terrible lung disease turned his lips purple, and his dry coughs cut through the silence like knives. Elena put the bouquet of flowers on the rickety wooden table and quickly used a damp towel to wipe the sweat from his forehead. "Sister?" Henry opened his eyes slightly, his voice weak. "Did you win a prize?" Elena swallowed, forcing a smile. "Yes, we have a prize, but the prize doesn't matter." His eyes lit up for a moment, then faded away in fever. Looking at Henry, Elena's heart twisted. She knew she didn't have much time left. The money for medicine was gone, and the work at the pub wasn't enough to hold on. In just a few more days they could lose this dilapidated room. There was a knock on the door, 3 times, deep and decisive. Elena was startled, her heart pounding. Who would be looking for her at this hour? The door creaked open, and there, like a shadow appearing, stood Adrian Blackthorn. The flickering oil lamp illuminated her angular face, her silver-gray eyes like swords cutting through the darkness. "What are you doing here?" Elena took a step back, instinctively wary and trembling. Adrian entered without invitation. In his hand was a thick envelope, sealed with red wax. He placed it on the table, next to the crushed bouquet, then looked straight at Elena. "I came to offer you a choice." Elena bit her lip. "I don't need charity." "Not charity," Adrian replied shortly. "It's a job." He opened the envelope and took out a stack of papers with a formal stamp. "Thorn Farm maintains a garden of medicinal herbs and medicinal plants. I need a manager, someone with patient hands and a caring heart. You will receive a living wage, have your own cabin, and the farm doctor will treat your brother." Elena was stunned. Each word was like an invisible net wrapped around her, suffocating both her pride and her desire to survive. "Why me?" Her voice trembled. Adrian tilted his head, his eyes penetrating. "Because I watched you. Don't you know? Last year, when one of my workers was bitten by a poisonous snake, everyone was panicking, but you were the one who took a knife to cut the wound, sucked out the poisonous blood, and found herbs to stop the bleeding. He lived because of you." Memories came flooding back. Elena remembered that night, blood flowing under the moonlight, the smell of damp earth and sweat mixed together. She had done everything to save a life, not thinking anyone would care. Yet, he had seen. "I needed that strength at Thorn Ranch," Adrian continued, his voice hoarse like distant thunder. "And today, I saw you endure humiliation and still stand tall. That's the kind of courage that 100 men in silk don't have." Elena clenched her fists, her eyes flashed with anger. "You say it well. But if I agree, won't the whole town say I'm selling myself for the mercy of a baron?" Adrian moved closer. His shadow covered Elena's small figure. He bent low, his hot breath fanning her cheek. "I'm not buying you, Elena Ward. I'm giving you a place to stand. The choice is yours." In that moment, the distance between them was only a few inches. Elena could feel the power, the scent of skin mixed with the smell of gunpowder and mountain wind. Her heart was pounding, but her reason was screaming at her to back off. She turned away, biting her lip until it bled. "Go," she said softly, her voice broken. "I need to think." Adrian stood up straight, his eyes flickering slightly. He nodded slightly, leaving the stack of papers on the table. When his hand left the envelope, his fingers lightly touched the back of her hand. a brief touch that made Elena's whole body tremble as if on fire. "You have until dawn tomorrow," he said in a low voice, "to decide. After that, I won't wait any longer." He turned and walked away, each step echoing in the quiet room, until the door slammed shut, leaving behind a cold wind smell and a trembling aftertaste. Elena collapsed into a chair, her heart still pounding. The ivory-white stack of papers lay right before her eyes like a key that had just opened and locked. She wanted to tear it away, wanted to scream that she didn't need anyone to decide her fate. But from the bed, Henry's violent cough sounded, a choking sound that tore at her lungs. She rushed over and hugged him. His lips were stained red with blood. Elena was frightened, tears welling up. Henry's every shudder was like a knife cutting straight into her sister's heart. Looking at her dying brother, Elena understood that the choice was no longer about self-respect or pride. It was the boundary between life and death. She turned back to the table. The red envelope was still there, heavy as a stone. Elena reached out, gently touching the edge of the paper, her fingers trembling. A whisper echoed in her head, "I'm not buying you. I'm giving you a place to stand." Tears rolled down. Elena clutched the stack of papers to her chest, her shoulders shaking. The door to survival had opened, but to step through, she had to sacrifice her last pride. Outside, the moon had set, leaving behind a thick darkness. In that darkness, Elena knew her life was about to take a turn, from which there was no turning back. Dawn covered the vast fields in pale yellow. The sky was clear, flocks of sparrows flapping their wings from the roofs of the barns. The wind carried the scent of hay and freshly plowed earth. Elena Ward tightened her grip on her canvas bag, supported a coughing Henry, and walked through the tall wooden gate of Thorn Ranch. The two workers stopped working, leaned on their picks and shovels, and stared. One spat on the ground, slightly raising his lips. "Isn't that the girl who served wine at the inn? Now she's the manager of the herb garden?" The other sneered, his voice mocking. Maybe it was her wet dress that caught the Baron's eye at the festival. Who knows? The mocking laughter pierced Elena's ears. She took a deep breath, keeping her back straight. Although the blood rushed to her face, she quietly continued walking. Inside the gate, Adrian Blackthorne was waiting, his tall figure standing out against the sunlight. He said nothing, just bent down and picked Henry up as if he weighed nothing. Then led the way to a small cabin behind the stables. The cabin was simple, with rough wooden walls and a thatched roof, but it was cleaner and warmer than any place Elena had ever been. There was a fresh blanket on the bed, a pot of steaming herbal tea. The farm doctor was there too, immediately taking Henry's pulse. Elena stood still, both grateful and confused, because everything seemed to have been prepared in advance, as if Adrian had known she would come. Her first day began in the herb garden. The pungent smell of sage, mint, and dried ginger root wafted in the wind. Wide beds stretched out, weeds growing in between, white daisies blooming in patches. Elena rolled up her sleeves and knelt down to prune, her hands soon covered in dirt. Workers passed by, no one helped. One deliberately kicked her basket of herbs, leaving the branches and leaves to scatter. Elena bit her lip, patiently picking up each branch. Her heart ached, but her eyes did not shed a tear. At noon, the sun was scorching. Her back was soaked with sweat, her hair stuck to her forehead. When she struggled to stand up, a wave of dizziness came over her. The world spun, her knees buckled. A strong arm suddenly wrapped around her, holding her. The smell of horsehide, gunpowder smoke, and woody scent wafted through. Elena looked up, meeting the stormy gray eyes right above her head. "Adrian, are you going to collapse just because of a few branches?" His voice was deep and firm, but he could not hide his concern. Elena wanted to push his hand away, but she had no strength left. Being lifted up, she felt embarrassed when her face touched his chest, clearly hearing his strong heartbeat. A wave of heat rushed through her body, making her confused, quickly turning her face away. "Put me down. I haven't finished yet. If you keep trying, you won't have enough strength to get out of bed tomorrow." Adrian weighed each word. He took her back to the cabin and set her down on the chair. Their eyes met for a moment. Elena saw that in those gray eyes there was not only coldness but also an indescribable conflict. Before she could understand, he turned away, leaving behind a warm scent still lingering on his chest. The following days were full of challenges. Elena worked tirelessly, her hands bleeding from knives and thorns. Every night she returned to the cabin with a sore back, but still smiled as Henry gradually got better. The bowls of medicine from the medicinal garden that she had prepared herself gradually drove away the fever. However, the suspicion of the workers did not decrease. Someone deliberately poured a bucket of water over her medicine basket. Someone whispered behind her back, "It's just a doll protected by the Baron." Each word was like a knife, but Elena did not respond. She let her hands speak for her. Diligently and persistently, each bed of medicine gradually revived under her hands. One night, the rain poured down. The wind howled through the cracks in the door. The ceiling of the cabin leaked, cold drops falling. Elena quickly put a pot to catch it, but the water kept pouring in. She rushed out, trying to pull the tarpaulin over the roof. The strong wind tore it open, almost knocking her down into the mud. Suddenly, a large hand held her tight. Adrian appeared in the rain, his hair drenched, his shirt clinging to his muscular body. He held the tarpaulin with her, his muscles tensed right next to him, making Elena's breath catch. In a flash, lightning flashed across the sky, his face only a hand's breadth away from hers. Rainwater slid down his cheeks, his lips pressed tightly together, his eyes shining. Elena felt her heart pounding wildly, her hand trembling in his. For a moment, their breaths mingled. If it weren't for the thunder, their lips might have touched. Elena quickly pulled back, panting, her face burning. Adrian was silent, but his hand still clenched, not letting go. He tilted his head slightly, his voice low enough for only she to hear. "Don't carry it all alone. You don't have to fight alone." With that, he let go and turned away. But in Elena's chest, a fire had just flared up that was not easy to extinguish. That was how the first days at Thorn Ranch were. Sweat, blood, tears, mixed with strange moments that made her heart waver. Elena knew that the real test was just beginning. And Adrian Blackthorn, the man she both feared and desired, was the fire she could not yet fully understand. The early summer rains had stopped, leaving a damp atmosphere and the strong scent of young grass permeating the fields of Thorn Ranch. Elena Ward had become accustomed to the rhythm of life here. Picking herbs in the morning, mixing medicine at noon, drying leaves in the afternoon. Her once soft hands were now calloused, her arms tanned, but every time she looked in the mirror in the dim light, she saw a new light in her eyes. The light of someone being tested and gradually proving his worth. Henry was stronger, his cough no longer tearing his chest. Every evening, he sat propped up against the pillows, his eyes sparkling as she read to him. Those were Elena's favorite moments, the steady voice of the narrator mixed with the sound of insects on the porch, creating a warm rhythm. One evening, with the oil lamp flickering, Elena was reading about faraway lands when the cabin door opened slightly. Adrian Blackthorn walked in, holding an old leather-bound book in his hand. He didn't say anything more, just put it on the table. Tommy found it in the old bookstore. He thought Henry would like it. Henry cheered, hugging the book. Elena gently raised her head to look at Adrian. In the golden light, his face was softer than usual, no longer the cold mask that made many people wary. "Sit back," Elena said unconsciously. Adrian hesitated, then pulled up a wooden chair, sat by the fireplace. Henry opened the book, asked her to read it to him. Elena's voice hummed, each word resonated. A moment later, a second, deep, hoarse voice suddenly spoke. Adrian picked up the book, continued reading the rest. Elena sat there, stunned. His voice was deep, slow. Each word seemed to fall into space, creating a strange attraction. Henry fell asleep, breathing evenly. In the room, there was only Elena and Adrian, the sound of the night rain outside the window and the flickering fire reflected in his eyes. "Do you usually read to someone like that?" Elena asked, her voice trembling slightly. Adrian shook his head slightly. "No, this is the first time." The answer made Elena's heart skip a beat. They sat in silence, only the sound of the wind blowing through the crack in the door. Then, in that silence, Elena felt the warmth spread from the man sitting next to her, seeping into every empty space inside her. Another night, the weather was hot. Elena went out to the garden to pick mint and saw Adrian standing by the wooden fence, looking into the distance. His silhouette stood out in the moonlight, his white shirt rolled up high, his biceps bulging under the thin fabric. "You haven't slept yet?" Elena said softly. Adrian turned around, his eyes silver in the moonlight. "What about you?" She smiled weakly, lifting the basket of mint. "I can't sleep. The scent of mint helps Henry breathe easier." He stepped closer, took the mint from her hand, his fingers accidentally touching her skin. A jolt of electricity ran down Elena's spine, and Elena shivered slightly. Adrian noticed, his eyes darkening. "You don't have to carry it all alone," he whispered. The distance between them was too close. Elena looked up, her breath caught in her throat. In that moment, she saw his lips only a few inches away, saw the restraint burning in his eyes. Her heart screamed to step forward, but her mind held back. "You shouldn't." Elena turned away, her voice trembling. Adrian was silent, but before he left, his hand gently touched her shoulder, a fleeting yet hot touch, leaving a lingering echo throughout her body. As time went on, Elena realized that Adrian not only helped with actions but also gradually opened his heart. He spoke little, but each time he appeared, the space seemed to stop. He placed a bundle of firewood in front of the cabin door, left a warm blanket by Henry's bed, fixed the cabin roof when she didn't know. No explanation, no boasting, just silent actions. Once, when she collapsed in the herb garden from exhaustion, he carried her back and put her on the bed. When Elena woke up, moonlight was streaming through the window, and Adrian was sitting there, his shadow long against the wall. His eyes were half closed, but his hand was still on her forehead, checking her temperature. At that moment, Elena's heart melted. She lay still, silently watching the hard face in the moonlight, and for the first time admitted that the coldness hid a yearning heart, a tenderness reserved for only a few. In the following days, they gradually found peace in the silence. When Elena crushed tobacco leaves, Adrian sometimes stood still, giving her more water. When she read to Henry, he sat beside her, his deep voice blending with hers. Once, a strong wind blew out the oil lamp. In the darkness, Elena staggered, touching Adrian's hand. Instead of letting go, he squeezed it. They stood close together, the darkness surrounding them, their breaths mingling. Elena trembled, wanting to pull away but unable to. "You always try to keep your distance." His voice echoed softly. "But I know. You feel it too." Elena did not reply. Her heart was pounding, hot blood was rushing through her body. For a moment she looked up, her lips almost touching his. But then Henry's cough echoed from the bed, pulling her back to reality. She quickly let go of her hand and stepped back. Adrian was silent, his face blurred in the darkness. But she knew, from that moment, there was an invisible, tense bond between them that could not be broken. In the evenings that followed, when the insects chirped on the porch, when the fire flickered in the fireplace, Elena knew her heart was no longer at peace. She no longer thought only of survival, of taking care of Henry, but also of those silver-gray eyes, of the strong hand that always reached out when she was weak. Love, like a smoldering fire, was creeping into every hidden corner of Thorn Ranch. It did not burn fiercely but blossomed in silence, in brief touches, in suppressed glances. But Elena knew, sooner or later, that fire would burn everything. The sun was high in the sky, and the heat was oppressive over Thorn Ranch. The sound of hammers, mooing cows, and the arguing of workers harmonized into a deafening cacophony. Elena Ward, as usual, knelt beside the sage bed, her hands sticky with herbal sap, sweat running down her back. Suddenly, a shout rang out from the stables. "The stable boys' wages are gone!" The workers stirred, abandoning their work and running toward the barn. Elena stood up too, wiping her hands on her apron, her heart pounding. In the barn, the wooden chest where the money was kept was flung open. A small leather bag, where the stable boys' wages were kept, was missing. Everyone's faces were pale, and whispers immediately arose. "Where's the money? There's a thief among us." Elena felt the air thicken. A suspicious glance passed by, and then, as if someone had triggered it, a shrill voice rang out. "I saw her around here this morning." All eyes immediately turned to Elena. She froze, the blood draining from her face. "I won't take it," she burst out, her voice trembling but firm. "Search her cabin," a bearded man shouted. No one waited for approval. They all rushed towards the small cabin. Elena tried to squeeze in, but was pushed back. The cabin door burst open. Everyone rushed in, searching every corner. Henry panicked, hugging his pillow. "Sister, what happened?" Elena rushed in, blocking her bed. "Don't touch our things." But it was too late. A worker pulled a heavy leather bag from Elena's old canvas bag. When he opened it, glittering silver coins fell to the wooden floor. The whole room was silent. Then a cry rang out. "It was her. This girl stole it." "Shameless, do you think wildflowers can cover up your greed?" Elena was stunned. Her eyes were dizzy, unable to believe. The bag had never been hers. Someone had set a trap. "I didn't take it." Her voice broke, choked. "Someone put it in my things. You have to believe me." But the jeers and curses echoed back. No one listened. Amidst the chaos, a deep, resolute rang out. "Stop." The crowd fell silent. Adrian Blackthorne appeared in the doorway, his tall figure blocking the light. Elena gasped, her blue eyes filled with tears as she looked at him as if clinging to a last ray of hope. "You know I didn't do it. Please tell me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Adrian looked at the bag of money on the floor, then looked up, his gaze fixed. But he was silent. Just that silence, like a knife stabbing straight into Elena's heart. Her blood stopped flowing. Not the workers, not the slander. It was Adrian's silence that was the fatal blow. "You don't believe me either?" She stepped back, her shoulders shaking. Adrian opened his mouth, but no words came out. Those silver eyes were dark and torn, but his silence was enough. Elena bit her lip, the taste of blood spreading on her tongue. In her wet eyes, pride flared. She turned, pulling Henry off the bed. "If even you doubt me, what reason do I have to stay?" Henry coughed, weakly holding her sister's hand. Elena wrapped herself in a thin blanket, holding her brother close. All eyes followed her as she walked out of the cabin, past the whispering workers. Outside, dark clouds swirled. The wind picked up, swirling dust. Elena led Henry through the oncoming storm, her skirt wet with mud, her hair stuck to her face. She didn't look back, but she could still feel the heavy gaze from the porch where Adrian Blackthorne stood motionless. He didn't call her back. Not a word. Elena gritted her teeth, her heart breaking. Every step away from Thorn Ranch was another stab in her heart. That night, the rain poured down on the dirt road. Elena was almost exhausted, but she still led Henry away from the ranch lights. Thunder rumbled, lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating her face. Pale, desperate, but her eyes still full of pride. In the rain, Elena whispered to herself, "They can take away my honor, they can bury me in the mud, but I will not fall. Never." Henry snuggled into her arms, whispering softly, "I believe you. No matter what anyone says, I still believe." Elena's tears mixed with the rain. That was the only comfort left. At Thorn Ranch, Adrian stood silently in the darkness, watching the small figure gradually disappear into the rain. His hands were clenched, his fingernails imprinted in his palms. He wanted to call her back, wanted to step forward, but his feet felt like they were chained. When Elena was completely gone, the ranch suddenly became colder than ever. The wind whistled through the cracks in the door. The herb trellises shook violently, as if crying for the person who had just left. Adrian knew he had just lost the most precious thing. But when he realized it, it was too late. The rain had stopped. The sky over Dust Hollow was pale. Ashen clouds covered the streets. The market square was open again, the cries of vendors, the sound of wooden wheels grinding on stone, the loud laughter as if there had never been a stormy night. But to Adrian Blackthorne, everything was empty. Thorn Ranch was as quiet as a tomb since Elena left. The herb garden was withered, the cabin was dark, Henry's laughter had disappeared. Adrian himself walked between the rows of stables, his heart heavy, like a man who had lost his heart. The truth came unexpectedly. One evening, little Tommy ran into the stables, panicking. "Uncle Adrian, I found this." In his hand was an old leather bag wrapped in moldy cloth. When he opened it, inside was the lost money, along with a scrawled note. "Let's see how long that country girl can hold her head high." The handwriting was familiar, that of the old butler who had often taunted Elena. Adrian was stunned. He slumped in his chair, his hands clutching his leather bag. Guilt cut like a knife into his chest. He had doubted the only girl who had dared to stand tall in the storm. He had let his silence kill her trust. He could not lose her again. The next day, when the market was crowded, Adrian stepped onto the old wooden platform where the cattle auction was held. The crowd murmured, "It's the Baron. He has never appeared in public." Adrian held up the worn-edged paperback notebook, the small diary Elena had accidentally left in the cabin. His voice was deep, not shouting, but resonating straight into the hearts of the listeners. "I am not good with words, but today I must speak. I let a woman of strength and pride leave me because I was silent when she needed me most." The whispers gradually died down. He opened the diary and read Elena's trembling words. "I don't need to be saved. I need to be seen as a woman worthy of love. I want to be loved, not pitied." The whole square fell silent. The vendors stopped working, the children stopped laughing, and everyone focused on the tall figure. Adrian looked up, his voice breaking. "Elena Ward had more power than I did, all the land and gold. She endured humiliation without bowing, sacrifice without recognition. I doubted her, and when she left, Thorn Ranch was emptier than ever. Today, before everyone, I admit, it wasn't the ranch that needed her. It was me that needed her, because I loved her." A tremor ran through the crowd. The jeers bowed their heads, a few women wiped away tears. At the edge of the market, Elena stood dumbfounded. She'd only come to sell some dried herbs, to buy some loaves of bread for Henry. But now, her name rang out in the square, the confession hitting her heart. Henry took her hand, his voice trembling in a whisper. "Sister, listen, he's telling the truth." Elena trembled. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed. She walked slowly through the crowd, each step like a dream. When Adrian saw her, his usually cold silver eyes suddenly lit up. He stepped down from the podium, striding towards her. The distance was shortened. The crowd parted, watching in silence. "You hurt me," Elena whispered as she faced him. "In your silence, you took away my last hope." Adrian knelt before her, oblivious to the astonishment around him. His eyes burned, his outstretched hand trembled. "Take it back. Take back my heart. Elena, you're more than worthy. You're everything to me." Elena's tears streamed down her cheeks. She wanted to resist, to keep her pride. But then Henry gently lifted her skirt, his childish voice choked. "Sister, can we go home?" The word home hit the softest spot. Elena burst into tears, rushing into Adrian's arms. The crowd erupted, applause resounding throughout the square. Adrian held her tight, whispering in her hair, "Not for the farm, not for duty, but because I can't live a day without you." A few weeks later, Dust Hollow witnessed the simplest but most bustling wedding in many years. In the wildflower field, where Elena had once been laughed at, now stood a wooden arch, decorated with ivy and white daisies. Elena wore a cream-colored linen dress, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Not extravagant, not gold or silver, but in everyone's eyes, she was more radiant than any young lady who had ever worn silk. Adrian stood waiting under the arch, his black suit neat, but his eyes burned uncontrollably. As Elena approached, fiddle music began. Children threw flower petals and peasants cheered. Tommy, the boy who had secretly yearned for love, wore a ring in his battered straw hat and smiled brightly. Henry, now stronger, stood beside her, his smile sparkling. The vows were made. When the priest asked, "Does anyone object?" Tommy's playful voice echoed through the crowd. "I don't object, but I need my mother more than the farm needs her." The whole field burst into laughter. The applause was thunderous. Elena covered her mouth and laughed in tears. Adrian bent down and kissed her on the lips amidst the cheers. There was no pomp in the wedding, only wildflowers, golden sunshine, and recognized love. Elena, from a poor girl who was ridiculed, now stood shoulder to shoulder with the powerful Baron, not as a saved person, but as a chosen woman, loved for who she was. The afternoon fell. Elena leaned her head on Adrian's shoulder. The sunset dyed the field red. He squeezed her hand, whispering, "This time, no one can take you away from me. You are my home, forever." Elena closed her eyes, smiling peacefully. She knew that life would still have storms, but from now on, they would face them together. And on the land of Thorn Ranch, love has found its place. Elena Ward went from the bottom of humiliation to the top of cherished love. She did not win with her flashy appearance, nor with anyone's pity. What made the whole town bow down and a powerful baron kneel before her was her pride, her perseverance, and her loving heart. In life, there will be times when we will be trampled like Elena's wildflower bouquet, doubted, laughed at, even betrayed by those we put our trust in. But as long as we keep our backs straight, do not bow our heads, in the end, the truth and our true value will speak out. True love does not come to save us, but to see and cherish. Adrian did not choose Elena out of pity, but because he recognized the strength and light inside her. And that is what each of us needs. No one comes to save us, but to walk with us, because we are worthy. Remember, you may be poor, you may be despised, but if your heart remains kind and proud, one day the whole world will have to listen to you.